the selectmen before we can even make a decision on it. So I had asked him, and he forwarded me some practice procedures for town hall. I told him I would pass those along to the selectmen for their consideration, but I did want to have a discussion on it. And I guess, Steve, my question would be, do we have an idea from the Board of Selectmen as to when we're looking at possibly opening up some buildings?
We haven't had any discussions on that, especially with the numbers going up that they are right now in town and so forth. I don't think we're gonna, from a selectman standpoint, do it anytime soon. You know, we're always welcome the feedback of the Recreation Commission too, on what you guys think.
I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it something that we want to try and put something together to bring to the selectmen as far as maybe some protocols? You know, because I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, before you'd even want to open Town Hall, we'd need to come up with a process, procedures, and protocols that we would have to have in place there, right?
So that's correct. And also a thorough cleaning and how we're going to fund the cleaning and what is going to happen and what's the duration, under what guidelines will we be cleaning, and, you know, all the things like that. What will the separation be of people? How many people will be allowed in the building? So, yeah, we need something pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want to start looking at that, because I mean, even though it's not probably an immediate need, I don't think we're going to be looking at opening it up anytime in the real near future, but maybe have something ready so that when they do give us a go, we're not scrambling at that point. And we can get it together and maybe streamline that process. So as soon as we get to go, we can put it in place and open it for those groups that are willing to follow it. And I mean, I guess my biggest concern is, like anything else, how are we going to follow up on it? You know, we're not going to have somebody sitting in, you know, it's not like, you know, the library that they can put some protocols in place. They're going to have a librarian or somebody there at all hours it's open, so they can sort of monitor and make sure it's being done. We don't have that luxury. So so maybe people can make that part of next agenda, and maybe we can come with some ideas and sort of put together, at least start piecing together some protocols for that. I'll submit some things. I'm more than likely going to miss the next meeting because actually I will. Right now it's one of our practice days for basketball. So unless things change, which they very well could.
What's the next meeting? The 29th?
The 22nd.
22nd.
Okay.
No, I mean, normally we sort of look at that week and it's going to be a tough week with the holiday right there. So we may want to look at that and possibly postpone it. But we do need to meet one more time before the end of the year to officially put in a request for encumbered funds, right, Steve? Do we need to give an actual dollar amount and what they're used for, or how would that work?
I think you need to give a dollar value and just what you want to use them for.
Okay. All right, so we'll discuss that, I guess, in a little bit. But that was the only facility request, unless anybody received any others. All right, new business.
Hey, Andy, before we go on, and now a little clarification on who is this person that requesting? Is this part of the rec, or is this not knowing the background of Mr. Burke?
Oh, Steve Burke is LRBL, the Litchfield Rec Basketball.
Okay, so it is.
So he's a travel. And one thing, just to sort of fill you guys in, and we'll sort of probably have to establish it again, just because there's been so much turnover in a lot of the leagues and organizations. Generally, for field requests and town hall requests, we put in place, it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago now, that each organization should have one or at most two people that are putting these requests in. because we don't want to be getting requests from the 5th and 6th grade coach and the 8th grade coach and then the 2nd grade coach, and because they need to have some semblance of a schedule and have, so basketball usually had 2 people that made requests. They had a travel coordinator and a rec coordinator, because the travel basically worked with all the travel coaches and the rec coordinator worked with all the rec coaches, and they would put that request in. It really made things a lot easier, and they weren't fighting over times. And also, in order for insurance to cover them, the league needs to be aware that a practice is being held in order for their insurance coverage to cover it.
Both travel and regular rec fall underneath Litchfield Rec basketball.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So for new business, we have the RFP responses. So hopefully you guys got those. I never got the original copy back from Troy, but these are pretty readable.
So Andy, Troy's been out ill all week, so he hasn't been able to play it. Yep.
So you can see we got 2 bids. One from Natticook, and one from
Trimmers.
So, as part of public process, I do need to mention, so our first bid from Natticook was for a total of $53,000. And that was all inclusive for the RFP. And then the bid from Trimmers was $61,000, not including the mowing of the designated areas of the tennis courts and river access. That would be an additional $2,100. So their total bid, all inclusive, would be $63,100.
Now, was TLC notified that would have to resubmit, or is their bid still standing?
I did not notify them that they needed to rebid. I did tell them that the Board of Selectmen had the decision that the Board of Selectmen had made to open the RFP for bids because of only one sealed bid. So I was assuming that the TLC bid would still be valid in this RFP because we haven't changed the RFP.
I believe the direction that Troy gave that evening, Andy, when you presented it, was that he would have to rebid because it was a new bidding cycle.
Okay. I was not aware of that, and I didn't let that. I don't know if that was passed along to TLC.
I mean, that's fairly typical, I would think, of the bidding process, that if the bids are rejected and it's put back out to bid, they'd have to resubmit. I've done some bid work myself in the past, and that's always been the case.
Well, I mean, we'll follow whatever the protocols are, but I mean, technically, the bid was not rejected. It was not accepted by the Board of Selectmen. We actually had accepted the bid. Any discussion, or anybody have a motion on the bid proposals?
Steve, can you give any insight as to was the bid rejected because there was only one bid? Was it too high? Or was it
because of only one bid. It was one bid, and it was successfully higher last year. So therefore, as the board, they decided they should go back out to bid and see if we can get more people bid on it.
Gotcha.
So I'm looking at the meeting minutes from November 9th or November 8th meeting, and within it said the commission to request another proposal as direct solicitation. It also says PLC is interested in the job. The contractor would need to enter a new proposal. So I can share these with everybody. It's actually page 3 of the meeting minutes.
All right, so, and where were we did not contact TLC to let them know of that. So where does that responsibility lie? Is that something I was supposed to have done?
I do not know, but go back and watch the video of the, but I remember Troy referencing that.
Well, again, going back to my experience, just working in the bid markets before, recently, it's their responsibility to check to check and see what happens with their bid once it's submitted, if it's been awarded, if it's been rejected. And then if it goes back out to rebid, they have to check on that.
Like you, Chris, I spend a lot of time in that 5 bid market, and that's the normal protocol.
Right, but I mean, we approved the bid. I don't know. I know it's splitting hairs maybe, but I just, all right. So, I mean, I'm open for discussion on the bids.
I'll start off. So I met with both actually Natticook as well as Tremors. Tremors was quite impressive. They have a good crew going on. They've been in business for 24 years. They currently take care of Londonderry's fields, I believe he said. They have 3 or 4 crews that are dedicated to 3 or 4 3-man crews, plus I think he said 2 crews that are dedicated just to residential. The other crews are all commercial or fields. They also have a dedicated irrigation guy. They are completely licensed, so they have all the requirements to apply any fertilizer or applications for weed control, et cetera, et cetera. I know that was one of the requirements we had in place. I don't know if the other 2, Natticook or TLC, specified that they had these licenses. That is a concern. I do like that Natticook is in town and he does have a vested interest, or they have a vested interest in our fields. I know we're off to a rocky start last year with Natticook. I believe he did make any amends and did what he had to do to prove our trust, if you will, as well as taking care of the Darrow Field, which I think looks absolutely splendid at this point in time. And the irrigation, he showed us that he addressed 145 different heads, cleaned them, replaced. I think he replaced 145 heads, but he cleaned all of them. And we saw some substantial garbage caught up in the lines. With TLC, I don't remember what the actual bid was, or if he has his specified licenses to apply the pesticides and chemicals. I know in the previous years, I believe he did not. And that is my input on the 3 of them.
On the licensing for TLC, just because I did have conversation with him after he submitted the first bid. He does not currently have a license, nor will he. It is just, for most of these guys, it's just too much to maintain. So they generally will subcontract that to somebody because there's so many hoops to run through. It doesn't make sense to do it if it's just something you're going to do here and there. Usually that's their dedicated service. So.
And I'm looking at his bid right now, and it was pretty vague. It did include mowing of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 fields, and the total was $59,700.
59,000.
59,700.
And he does not have a license. Now, are they allowed to subcontract? I don't know if it specifies in our contracts that they can subcontract.
It's not, they couldn't, the only problems we've run into in the past is when they subcontract the mowing. Because we ran into that issue with a previous contractor. For the most part, the pesticides, you want a specialist in there doing it.
Well, just on that, I had dropped a bunch of the RFPs off to Tim at Tim's Turf, just so, because I know he can distribute them to the appropriate people. And some of the feedback I got from him is that a lot of the people that were reading through the RFP saw that they were required to be licensed, and that's why they chose not to pursue the bid. So for next year's RFP, I think that's language that we need to look at and make sure that we can at least, if that's what's holding people back from bidding on this, I think we need to amend that so more people will actually submit bids. I think as a board, we need to get the most competitive price, and B, we want our fields to look nice, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what we can add is something in the fact that you need to be licensed, or any pesticides needs to be applied by a fully licensed and insured subcontractor with prior notification to the Recreation Commission.
Yeah, I think that's
they can't just pull another company, but as long as we know, hey, XYZ company's coming, here's their license, here's their insurance, great, go ahead and do it.
A quick clarification too. I just noticed that this bid is all inclusive. It has the river landing, it has the tennis courts and town hall on it as well. I missed that before, sorry.
For which one?
This is TLC, the 59,700.
Yes.
Includes those areas.
Yeah, clarification though. So TLC, that's not one of the options, right? Are we just looking at the two, saying that TLC is off the board? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I understand, but
They did not resubmit, so they would have to be.
yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah, and I concur. I think, if it's in the minutes, in the public minutes, that does go to the contractor as far as the final word. I just don't want to. I was just getting confused. So that's, I agree where we're at.
Does Natticook specify if he's licensed? I know we're looking at a loophole. I mean, ultimately, our end response is, as I say in the business, we don't care who does the work as long as we have someone's neck to choke. And is Natticook qualified? Does he have somebody in line that can play the specifiers?
If you read down into the Natticook bid and read into the insurance line says he's licensed for pesticides.
He's okay.
Steve, when you met with Trimmers, did he have any concerns? About anything? Did he say stuff looked thin? Did it? Actually, was the snow covered by then? I don't remember what it was looking like.
No, there was. I think I met him on Thursday. We had snow on Saturday. It was 28 degrees, so it was cold. He did take a ride around to all the fields. A couple questions about specifically on what qualified as the perimeters. So he asked about, he looked at John Bryan axis. and he understood exactly what needed to be done there. His question on Sawmill was, did the whole perimeter of the parking lot needed to be cut, or was it more about, up front by the tennis courts and then down by the fields? So as far as field maintenance, he got it. He looked at all of them. He said they all look good. He went to everyone, to Ennis, to Jeff Lane, to Corning Road. He said the fields look really good. It was more along what was in the qualifications of what needed to be cut in those exterior perimeters. What did he say? It was $2,100, which was John Bryan access and the tennis courts in front. He felt confident about what he was looking at, and he believed it would be the conversation I had with him, where I said that we want the fields to be cut before games on Saturdays and weekends. He understood. Like I said, he's been doing it for 24 years. So all in all, he gave me a great impression of they understood what they were going to do, and they were ready and able to be able to handle it.
Yeah, if you've ever seen, honestly, I mean, just an outside thought is, if you've ever seen any of those fields in Londonderry, they are very well maintained. West Road fields, especially, I mean, that's their main, rec playing area. That place is, that grass is, it's almost like turf, most of the year. So it's, I mean, they do a good job. Let's put it that way. That those fields are immaculate. So, just as someone who's been on those fields a bunch of times.
I guess I'd like to make a motion then to accept the bid by Trimmers Landscaping, the full amount of $63,100 for full field maintenance, as well as mowing for the 2 additional fields.
Peter, I think you're mixing the two bids. Trimmers was 63,000.
That's 63,100.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Getting
late in the afternoon for math.
I thought you were using Natticook's number. That's I apologize. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So the motion is to approve the bid for Trimmers for the amount of $63,100. And I will hear discussion. I'd like to start the discussion in the fact that the number one reason that we rebid is because of the price of the bid from TLC, and now we're looking at spending $4,000 or $3,000 more.
I agree with you, Andy. I think we have a budget issue at $63,000 right now. I believe that the Board of Selectmen and the budget committee together have plugged 53 or 52,000 into the budget. So therefore, if we're going to press on with $63,000, we're going to have to figure out how to trim another $10,000 to $12,000 out of our budget. Because presently, I think right now as a town, we're only below the tax cap by $30,000.
Now, in previous meetings, I mentioned that it would be great if we were able to have a third party come out and basically give us a true estimate of what it would cost to maintain our fields. Being feeling new to this group and not having any experience in this arena, I always was concerned: are we overpriced? Are we underpriced? Are we getting enough for our money? So to me, I don't know if this is a great price, this is a good price, or is this where we should actually be landing? I'm under the impression, especially after meeting the guy that with 24 years experience, it seems like this is where it should land, is I guess around the $60,000 mark.
Well, I mean, again, if you read through the minutes of that selectmen meeting, they basically said it was too high because it was, they believed it was too high because it was a solo bid. Why would we jump up that much money? And apparently now we've had, maybe not 3 bids all at the same time, but 3 bids, and 2 of them have come in, higher rather than lower. And so what does that mean in general for us? I don't know. Are we going to have to, change our thinking in terms of what bid we're taking because of budget issues? More than likely. We're more than likely going to have to, base our theory solely on the fact that, not solely on the fact, but on the fact that we're being pressed in terms of money for other programs, other issues that we have in town. I think a lot of our budget, at times, even a couple of years ago, our budget, the budget number we're looking at isn't overly a big jump from what it used to be. And we added another field pretty much. Or another, a field and the mowing at, another location. So, I don't know what we do. We can't, again, it's for us to go around looking for an extra $10,000 probably isn't going to end up being the best thing. However, we see where 2 bids have come in terms of cost, and it does give pause in terms of what our budgeting should be next year for this. Depending on, how things go and where we're headed with everything. Extra costs included, not just, okay, this is what we spent on the RFP, but what we've also spent money on in terms of field upkeep this year too. So, that's just my 2 cents on that.
So speaking to the cost issue, which I think is a very valid point, the experience I feel we've had over the last year was that the vendor came back to us with multiple requests for additional funds, some of which we approved during the course of the year. So I am of the mindset that this may not reflect the full cost based on the experience that we've had. And so I prefer to go with a higher level that seems to be more in the market with the other bids, with comprehensive services, rather than have continued discussions in the course of the year about vendors coming back for additional funding. So that's just what I feel the experience has been over the last year and why a higher number at this point may be appropriate. However, I think another way to address the cost issue, if we feel we're not priced right, is we have to look at cutting what's in these bids moving forward, because that's the other way to address it.
Agreed. Yeah. I would think we would need to, talk to some landscapers and figure out what is driving up our costs. Is it the treatments? Is it, what exactly could we cut out and have nice fields and still have, nice fields, but have it cost a fortune. So
unfortunately, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to sort of jump on what Mike had said earlier. If you look back at the last 10 years of our budget, we're up about $7,000 over what we were 10 years ago. And in those last 10 years, we have added Sawmill, we have added Jeff Lane, we have doubled the size of Dara. And now we're adding mowing at the river access. So we have we have 2 new properties, basically, actually 2 new properties and 2 expanded. And we're up $8,000 in 10 years. Figure fuel costs have been sort of fluctuating, but we have not seen a huge jump in this line, and we're getting more and more fields, and they're better maintained. We never had grass around Talent Hall. We never had irrigation around Talent Hall. That's all irrigated and being cut now. The whole thing at Sawmill, that was never there. Jeff Lane basically was cut probably 4 times, 5 times a year, period, because there's no irrigation. It was barely used. It's been increased in size. So, I think years ago, we went to a couple of different contractors from, PLC had been our contractor for 4 or 5 straight years. then we went to 2 different other contractors that were substantially less, and really saw the detriment to the fields from switching to those lower bids. You know, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to contact the recreation departments around us. But I mean, if you look at what our school department spends maintaining its fields, which is half the amount of field space that we have, and it's nearly double the cost. So I do think it's something that we need to, you know, not keep saying, how can we trim it? How can we trim it? How can we trim it? It's like, hey, what do we need to make sure that we can maintain these fields so that they're an asset to the town?
And going back on Andy's point, it's like, you know, yeah, what can we take out of this? And realistically, it's probably nothing. Because if we want fields that are, you know, look upkept and have grass and everything, we need all these things. Because the other option is to not have everything, not do as many have only a couple fertilization sessions and not line. And then what risk do we start running in terms of how the fields turn out? And realistically, we saw this 3-4 years ago. And what grubs end up coming in, they turn into dirt, they turn into weeds. Now it costs us more money or in a different landscape to come in and fix it. And, you know, again, it's okay, we need to give them a cycle to fix it back up and get it to where it wants to be. I mean, and this is the problem. We don't want, honestly, we have nice fields. We do. We have good fields. People come to our fields and are impressed with how nice they look. You don't want to be one of the places where they show up and they're like, well, okay, this is dirt. I mean, we're playing on dirt. We're playing on whatever. You want to have a representative, area to be playing on. And again, I didn't realize it was that stark of a difference. I didn't realize it was $8,000 in 10 years, and that's including adding sawmill, which alone at that time probably doubled the amount of field space we were using. We don't want to be penny pinching and pound foolish. We don't want to be there. We don't want to be that. We want to spend the proper amount.
But speaking on that point, and I'm just looking at the costs, one's $63,000, one's $53,000. I'll tell you, at the end of this year, I walked around to all the fields and they were all immaculate. And if we can get fields that look like that for $10,000 less, I think it's foolish to spend an extra $10,000 on, for what? I mean, and back to Peter's point where, stuff had to get mitigated, there were grub issues. I mean, we saw pictures of the grubs, they had to be dealt with. The soil was lacking nutrients. I mean, this is stuff that needed to be done to make them what they are. And I think honestly, at the end of the day, the proof was in the pudding. Like, I walked out to Jeff Lane and it was absolutely one of the most beautiful fields. Like, I never played on a field like that as a kid. I mean, it looks gorgeous out there.
We do realize basically no one played on those fields for 6 months, right? Like,
I do.
It's a big, there's a big difference between having the fields used every day and then not having the fields touched for months. I mean, oh, they're really green, they're really pretty. Well, yeah, they should be. Jeff Lane's coming in gradually too.
Mike, I agree with you 100%, but you also have to remember we had a drought this year. So
yeah, it was one of the worst droughts we've ever had.
I mean, so that speaks volumes to what happened at those fields.
So we cut back on our water usage at those fields?
No, we never did.
Yeah, we didn't cut back. We didn't cut back on the amount of time the irrigation was rolling at Sawmill. I wasn't at Jeff Lane, and I can't tell you what Jeff Lane was, but the irrigation at the other field was going just as much, regardless of drought or not. I mean, sawmill was being mowed. Sawmill was being mowed twice a week. If sawmill's being mowed twice a week, there isn't a water problem at sawmill. No matter what the drought conditions were.
The only field that we really feel the drought conditions is Dara.
Right.
Our other fields are basically in low-lying areas that usually our problem is excessive moisture. I mean, sawmill, and Mike will attest to this. I mean, how many times, Mike, do you have to say, "Oh, it's raining. You know what? We can't keep playing games because it just puddles and it's."
Yep, it holds water.
Yeah.
I mean, let me put it this way. I'm not saying the fields don't look great. They do. Again, it's one of those things where if we go with a lower bid, it's fine. But this year, every line of that lower bid should be taken into account when if costs are brought back to us saying we need to do this and this and this extra. Like, no, this is part of what the bid said. We're not paying you extra. Because I know that Sawmill had a grub issue 2 years ago, and that grub situation was dealt with. It wasn't extra money. It wasn't whatever. It was just dealt with in the contract. So again, if we're going to pay attention to the contracts and we're going to we want that true savings. And when it comes down to it, when whichever, and this isn't just that bid, it's any bid. When they come back to us and ask us for extra money, we have to go back to the bid and be like, you said in this bid, this is what you were covering. This is part of what you're covering. You owe us these services. That's all I'm saying.
All right, so any other discussion? We still have a motion for trimmers for $63,100. Hearing no other discussion, I will do a roll call vote for yeas and nays. Let me just mark down another column here. All right, Mr. Ruggles,
Nay.
Mr. Weber,
Nay.
Mike,
Nay.
Chris,
Nay.
Peter,
Aye.
Mr. Gannon,
Aye.
Colleen.
So I don't know what to do. We received an email and I don't know what to do. It went to the Board of Selectmen.
So, yeah.
So,
it's up to
I
you.
mean-
You can abstain if you feel you need to abstain. If you don't feel,
I don't think so, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
we're aware of Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, as long as we understand the relationship between Colleen and one of the bidders, she does not have to abstain as long as we are aware of this, correct?
That is correct. It's her choice if you'd like to abstain or not.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't like the email at all. That's all I'm going to say. But I'm going to abstain because I think this has been. I don't think that was fair, and I'm going to abstain.
All right, and I'm going to vote nay. So the vote fails. 5-2-1. I'm sorry, 2-5-1. Any other motions? Or do we all want to just get our own mowers and meet out there?
Well, I'll make a motion to accept the Natticook proposal of $53,000 for the field maintenance RFP.
All right, we have another motion. We have a second.
I will second.
All right, so we have a motion for Mr. Ruggles and a second for Mr. Weber. Feels like Groundhog Day. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll add that I know we started off with a rocky relationship last year. The vendor did come back to the till a couple times. As we mentioned earlier, I guess we need to figure out what is that true run rate for these fields. I am thinking that this bid is a little low, but I am under the impression that the vendor will do what he has to do to make sure that our fields are playable and they look presentable. Hopefully he has overcome any issues that he had last year, and next year should be promising.
My comment is the same as I just had in the last one. As this goes, should this bid be taken? Should this bid be accepted? When we are asked to fund different things, we have to go back and make sure that of what's covered under the contract before we say yes or no, depending on what we're paying out extra. The other thing is again, this is one of those things we're going forward. We need to look at, giving a buffer next year, especially the budget committee, especially the selectmen, saying, something at some point these bids have to go up more. We've increased, with one very large field, and two large field expansions over the 10 years, and the amount we have budgeted for this is barely adequate, is really what it comes down. So, we're basically being, I feel we've been backed into a corner in terms of what our budget is at this point. And because of that, can't do certain things we want to do. So, when it comes back to, requests on this bid, requests for additional field work, we are going to have to closely scrutinize the words of the bid.
Yep, so I'll be voting against the motion, although I understand we need to move forward with securing a vendor for this work, of course. But, I just have concerns with this vendor, given the experience over the last year. And I agree with the point that we need to really focus in on the details of our contract with the vendor going forward to make sure, we are getting everything that was agreed upon and not having to rehab this discussion during the course of the year. So we can hold to that price, which is where we want to land. I certainly expect that.
Well, theoretically, this is the same vendor that was here last year. So, if there's any fields to mitigate, that would fall under what they were supposed to do the previous year. So, it'd be pretty hard pressed to have somebody come to us and say, oh, well, the previous vendor didn't take care of what they were supposed to. Well, you were the previous vendor. So, I think we're kind of protected on that side. But that's just my thought.
And I agree to that point that, they just took field samples. So if anyone should know, it's the individual that has the contract now and just sampled the fields, knows exactly what nutrients are going to have to be applied. With that said, there should be no added nutrients needed because he knows right now, and he based his bid off those nutrients that are going to be required.
My feeling is, and I know we've got, I don't think Trimmers is local. The other, Natticook obviously is local guy, great guy. TLC, local guy. I still think that TLC should be part of the process, simply because we accepted their bid. I can follow up. I don't know if anybody from the selectmen or town hall had contacted them saying that bid at that point had been rejected after we did accept the bid. It was rejected because it was excessively high. And we're seeing that really it's smack dab in the middle of what we're looking at. And I think we're penalizing a company that serviced us for 6 or 7 years and did an outstanding job. Any other discussion?
So Tim is based out of Londonderry. The gentleman I met with lives in Bedford. His brother lives here in town, although I do not know if he works for the company itself. He did say that he spent time on our fields. Just for clarifications. It would be nice if we had more bids, and I think we are undershooting ourselves as far as cost goes.
They're up by the airport. They're on Harvey Road. I
Exactly.
happened to drive by there this morning. I was like, oh, there's trimmers. I had no idea what they were this morning.
I'm not voting, but I do want to make a point that I do agree with Andy. I mean, we took a bid. I mean, he did everything he was supposed to do. We approved it. We voted on it. It was accepted. Selectmen turned it down, and now for some reason I don't know why TLC, not TLC. I'm sorry, Natticook didn't bid the first time, and now has chosen to bid. I'm curious to know why that happened. It would have made sense to him to bid in the first place. So now he's had the opportunity to, gathering it was covered. I mean, it was videotaped, so they know what the bid numbers are. I don't think this process has not been a good process. We've not done it justice. Someone bid, we took the bid, it got turned down by the selectmen, and again, because of a high cost, we now know it's really not that high. And so one bid comes in $10,000 less than this bid, and this process is just doesn't look good. And I think I'm with Andy. I think we should have accepted TLC's bid, or at least let him know that he didn't and he needed to resubmit.
I guess, Steve, I know you can't speak for the selectmen, but I know it was rejected two parts. One for the high cost, but also there was only one bid. Is there going to be difference that we have two bids now? I mean,
I can't speak for the board as a whole. I mean, I don't know. One bid made it tough. Their biggest point was the increase from one year to the next, in lack of bids. So they wanted to go back out to see if we could get more bids and get it more in line to where we could actually approve it this year from a budget standpoint. Because as a town, with COVID, we do have a loss of revenue across the board. We've asked every department to pay balance the lowest possible budget to stay under the tax cap into our taxpayers.
And the other thing I think that Mike brought up is if you tally up what we spent this year, yes, the bid was 53,000 last year, but we wound up at around 57, if I'm correct.
I thought the bid
not including the replacement of the heads at the end, which put us around $61,000 altogether. So just to sort of put it in perspective, we did spend over $60,000 on our fields this year.
And maybe this is how we budget. Maybe this is how we have to account for it. I don't know where that, where does that money go? Do we have a separate budget that those overruns are coming out of? Should they really be coming out of that? Should they be coming out of that budget line? Should we be putting those extras into the budget line on the contract, on field maintenance, so it shows that we're over what we spent, what we budgeted last year? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Well, we do that. I mean, we will overspend lines.
Right.
We need to make sure our bottom line is zero, but
it's not the bottom. It's not the bottom line I'm looking at. I didn't look closely enough at it, but are we rolling these extra costs into that line item?
Yes.
For field maintenance?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're budgeting doesn't mean what we're actually spending. We're just budgeting something, and then what we're actually spending is coming in higher. But when we rebudget, we're being looked at for our budget numbers last year, not our actuals last year.
The way the budget process was supposed to run is we had asked everyone to do a bottom line budget. Go back, look at history, see what it is, and by line item, go and build it. And as a group, I think we tried to go do that. The biggest problem comes is if monies don't get allocated to the right line, because now you don't have the historical data on what that line actually spent.
Right.
And that's when you get into struggles like this. If we start robbing from one line to pay another, but we don't allocate the funds there, because it is a budget, we don't allocate it, we'll never know, and we're never gonna be able to grow that line to the
Right.
value it really needs to.
That's what I'm saying. We need to make sure that, that line is adequately reflected when we look at things.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, when we approved the extra stuff for the grubs, et cetera, that all went into field maintenance. So the only thing that did not go into field maintenance is the sprinkler repairs, which went into equipment maintenance.
But that was wasn't that after our budget process?
Well, that was, I mean, this current year.
Right. What I'm saying is we had the budget, we started going through the budget, in July? And the grubs and everything else didn't really come in until after that, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So next year, we're gonna have to look at what does Sawmill's irrigation need? What does Innisfield need for irrigation issues? What does Jeff Lane,
We're not talking about, but we're not even talking about irrigation. We're talking about
right,
the grubs.
in general.
We're talking
Right.
about the extra stuff, like the irrigation, Andy just said was a different line, like the heads and everything. It's the field maintenance portion where all of a sudden, if we're adding in grub control, that grub control should be under that field line. It shouldn't be under, an emergency line. Now, our problem this year is we're looking at these numbers and we're basing off of past, and then all of a sudden, all those grub issues come in afterwards to be handled. Now, we've already come up with a budget number based on our previous, whatever our budget was before, and what it looked like we were spending. But after we submitted our budget number, all of a sudden these numbers jumped up, and now we're kind of in a catch-22, where realistically our cost for the year is higher than it was higher than what was showing up in our budget. But now we're being penalized in it's coming in at $10,000 over last year. We're really, now last year our actual isn't going to be $10,000. It's going to be $5,000 over, $4,000 over, $3,000 over, that $10,000 gap. Okay, well, now what do we do? Now the bid that came in by TLC is only $2,000 or $3,000 over what it was in a single bid, and now is that going to be closer to? Would that have changed how things were looked at when it went in front of the selectmen last time?
And
When it all bubbles up, what is the overall cost it's gonna take to maintain these fields? Irrigation, fertilization, grub control, pesticides. 53,000 to me is low. We saw last year that between everything combined, it's bubbling up and it's costing us more. What is it going to be next year? This year we chased Dara, we chased some grub control with Jeff. What about Sawmill and Innisfields and the ongoing maintenance that's going to cost us money that we're not putting into it now?
Yeah, but we have line items for that stuff. Like most of that was like maintenance stuff. I think the grubs. Natticook was coming in after a previous contractor, and there was grubs there. Theoretically, if grub control was put down this year, there should be no grubs next year. And if there is, it's like, well, you didn't put down grub control properly, and that's your problem. I don't know. It just seems kind of like a no-brainer to me.
Well, just going back through, just to put things in perspective, again, last year's, I'm pulling up the bids that we received going into 2020. We got a bid from Natticook. His was a little strange last year, right? That was the one that he bid, and then so his bid was $49,956. That was what we approved, and we're going to wind up at $55,000 with the mitigations. So there were about $5,300 worth of additional costs added in. That same year, Proscapes had put a bid in and their bid was 45,400. And TLC had put a bid in, and it was 59,700. So it was exactly the same bid in 2019 as it was this year in 2020. So I guess, so right now we're looking at an increase from Natticook of almost $4,000 over their bid from the previous year. And again, maybe that's taking the mitigation into consideration from the soil samples. I'm not sure. All right, any other discussion on the motion? Again, we have a motion to approve the bid from Natticook for $53,000. All right, hearing no discussion, I will do another roll call vote. Mr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mr. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Bosky,
Nay.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Ames,
Nay.
Mr. Gannon.
Aye.
Colleen, are you abstaining or? And I will vote no. So the motion.
Sorry, Andy, I abstained. I'm not sure if you heard me.
Yes, I did. So that gives us a vote of 4 yeas, 3 nays, and an abstain. So the motion carries 4-3-1. All right. Next item in new business is comfort station removal. I assume this is a porta potty. Since when do we start calling them comfort stations?
Well, so I thought it didn't feel right putting in the formal agenda as porta potties. So
If you've ever been in one, they aren't really comfort stations at all.
Yeah, it's the
So Peter, just if you invite us over your house, we're like, I don't know. If he thinks this is comfort, I don't know.
comfort station's the first door on the right.
So we were talking about, now the only one we have left right now is down at Dara, correct?
No,
There's still one at Innis.
they're at every field.
All right, so they
That's
should
why
be
I brought it up.
they should be removed at the end of October from every field. The only one we leave year round is the one at Dara.
So Dara stays year round?
Yes. It has traditionally, I'm not sure exactly why. I know that it does get a lot of use even in the winter. There are people down there.
I mean, and honestly, it's not the last week of October, like the first weekend, like after the first weekend of November, because there may be games still in that first week of November at times. But after that, it's usually done.
Or probably, maybe we should just send November 15th just to put a date
Yeah.
to it.
I mean, after that, whoever's down there is down there on their own. So
Yeah.
So who initiates to have that done?
It used to be us, but now the contract's not with us it's a
I-
townwide contract, correct?
No, the only place we have porta potties are at rec fields.
Right, but it was done, Troy is the one that had done it. He was the one that had negotiated the price and
I think Troy just helped out because we were having issues back when Dave's was half in, half out. They weren't being cleaned. So I think Troy jumped in.
Well, actually,
to-
Kevin was, it was when Kevin was around. Kevin was the one that.
Kevin, exactly. Yep.
yeah, Kevin brought them all under. Kevin ended up being the one who took them all over. Because it used to be like, I mean, soccer used to do Innis and GMS even at the time. And then, I mean, when Sawmill came on, then it became, I think Kevin started doing the Sawmill one. And then at that point, it was like, why don't we just negotiate this all as one thing? And then he took the whole thing over.
And Kevin Lynch,
Yeah,
Brown, correct?
Kevin Lynch, yes.
Okay.
But after that, I thought it went to, I thought Troy had taken it over, but I didn't realize it was,
Right, because
Just
we don't have a
because-
contact. because they contact Troy, like when they can't get access for the gates, they'll contact Troy and then Troy will contact us. So I don't have a direct contact number for these guys.
Okay, I'll send Troy a note.
And if he wants us to do it, just let us know who the contact is and we'll make sure that we
I
take
don't
care
think
of it.
he minds doing it. I just think that we should probably remind him when they need to be pulled.
Okay.
And when they have to come back. I don't think he minds actually executing, calling, making the phone calls. Just, we can just tickle them and say, hey, we need all the porta potties dropped off, and we need them all removed. I think that would help him out a lot.
Okay.
Along those lines, can we do our due diligence in making sure that all the locks are set to a code that the vendors have? I know there is a vendor that's struggling to get into the porta potty at Innisfield or Comfort Station at Innisfield.
Here's my question. My question is, how do they get down there the rest of the year, but all of a sudden this guy couldn't get in? Someone at the company, usually they put it on like the work order that says it there or something, but the one guy at the end couldn't figure out how to get in, but the rest of the year they got in. Yeah.
Or it hasn't been dumped at all.
No, it was being cleaned.
It was delivered, and it was delivered.
So.
All right. So, and then do we want, when in reality should we have the rest of when should we have them delivered? And I know this year we delayed it because of COVID. But why don't we get some dates and that way we can let Troy know now, hey, April 1?
I think in April 1, it can vary from year to year, but a nice warmish spring, teams are already out there, try to get out there by April. Softball does, soccer will, baseball, anyone who can get outside as soon as they can will go outside. So,
so Steve,
I'd say April 1 to be safe.
If you guys are all comfortable with it, maybe we can just let Troy know April 1, we want them all delivered, November 15th, all picked up except for Darren, and just leave that. Unless you guys feel we need to have that one removed, but I think people do go down there and use the playground even in the winter. It's just nice having that there.
And
I see people walking their dogs and they use it, or if the playground. I think the one at there needs to stay. And I think we need some flexibility, as Mike was saying. If it's a nice warm spring, people are going to want to get out there early, so they can call them up and deliver it. And the same thing this year. Typically, we John Bryant River access is closed at the beginning of November, but last weekend it was 60 degrees. So there's no reason to close it until we start getting the cold. So I think we should treat the comfort stations the same way. It's warm out until it gets to the point where no one's going to use them.
Right. Well, and the comfort stations at Sawmill, Innis, etc. Really, we don't need them there once the organized groups stop and they have a schedule. Yeah. So it's, there's no groups going down to Brickyard or Innisfield right now. And if they are, then they're on their own. They can run home. All right. Old business, our 2020 budget. I think really what we need to do, and I apologize, I should have asked Karen for it today. But I think our next meeting, we just need to put this on there. And I think we need to have a hard and fast list of exactly what we need to encumber after we see what all of our expenses are after this week and next week in December. And we already know we've encumbered the $8,000 for the deck materials for talent, but then we can look at others, particularly any equipment we need or anything that we need for maybe a startup of the fishing derby or anything that we can do that Christmas in Litchfield, if we want to do something, maybe plan with hopefully with the vaccine, and we want to try and do a couple of extra events next year, and obviously our budget won't be able to include it. Let's see what we can pre-buy or encumber to take care of those, but would need to have, we can't just say we need $5,000 for an event, and then Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't need to have line items saying we're gonna spend $700 on the bouncy house and this on that, but hey, we're gonna hold this event, we estimate it's gonna cost $2,500. And we're gonna hold this event, we just estimate we're gonna need $1,200 or whatever.
That's correct, Andy.
So like I said, I will more than likely miss the next meeting, but I will be happy to the Sunday before that meeting, send send the spreadsheet with exactly what we have spent, what we have left in our budget. I'll keep, actually, you guys all have the access to the spreadsheet that I sent, the 2020 budget. I'll reshare it just so you guys all have it. Go to the top of your emails. I'll just keep this live. As soon as Karen sends me any updates, I'll put them in here on the right-hand side, or actually below. We can make a list of what we want to encumber money for, total it up, and then obviously we need to make sure that we don't go over our budget. But we should have our final utility bills in before next meeting, so we'll know exactly what we have left in all of our balances. And I mean, we saved a ton in custodian fees this year, but obviously that's because talent wasn't open. We just got to remind the budget committee next year when they go, well, you only spent $1,200 on custodian. It's like, well, Town Hall was closed for 10 months. So, any other thoughts or on the budget for 2020?
Equipment repair and maintenance, would that be something like, we mentioned, the bathrooms at Dara needing to be updated? Is that where that would fall?
The bathrooms at Dara?
Yeah.
That, well, it would depend on what you're talking about. If you're talking about replacing toilets and, doing an overhaul of things, that would probably be, that would go into building repair and maintenance. Equipment repair and maintenance is more for pumps. Like
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I think
we're spending
going forward,
$3,200. The $3,200 for the sprinklers is coming out of that line. So we're actually going to overspend that line by $1,900. But again, that's going to show in our future budget, so we'll know, hey, we overspent this. Why did we overspend it? Oh, we had to replace all these sprinkler heads and etc. So.
yeah, my concern is I think we need to put some money into that building, and the bathrooms are definitely one area that needs an updating. Maybe, as we mentioned before, touchless faucets and automatic urinals, etc., and toilets.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something, especially where it's a one-shot thing. I think that we'd be better off looking at, really spending some time next year and going through that building, bottom to top, put a list of everything that we need to do, and put a warrant article together because it's probably, we're probably talking 60, 70 grand. Because it depends on how much we spend on that, but once you spend a certain amount, you're going to have to bring it up to ADA compliance, and that could substantially increase the cost.
True.
And if that building's going to be our building for the long haul, we need to bring it up to ADA compliance anyway.
So if we were to put a warrant article, when would we be able to, in past, when would the funds be available to do that work? Would it be the following year?
No, it would be that year. So we'll be looking at 2022. So we would have to do if we had gotten a warrant article in for this coming March.
Yes, then it'll be ready for 2021. Yeah. So it'll be 2022.
I don't think we have enough time right now to go through and get a proper warrant article together. I think that point is passed. So, but I think that's something we should put on the agenda for this year and really have a target date of July 1st, having that warrant article, all the numbers ready for that warrant article. And maybe we put it with, the one that, Peter, I think, who was it, Andy or Peter that did the last warrant? Peter with the last warrant, the advisory one, seeing if we wanted to do. I think we should do both of them. Because I think literally if we put everything together as to what we need to do to get that building up to code, and if we're talking a substantial amount of money, give the people in the town a choice saying, hey, look, we can spend X dollars and get this building up to current codes and accessible and usable, or do you want us to look into possibly replacing it? So.
Andy, just speaking back to the line items, I'm looking at this week's budget report, and it does show that we overspent the equipment repair and maintenance line by $1,932.
Yep.
So it did get allocated to the proper line.
Yep.
And it's also showing as a budget as a whole, we have $30,607 left.
And I think we'll see some of that coming out with utilities, I think, but not too much. And I guess my other concern, I don't know, Steve, I know you're retired. I think it's going to be important for us to make regular visits to talent over the winter, simply because where it's not being used, if the heat goes out and we don't know it, we could have some burst pipes and whatnot. So it would probably be important to make sure that we're checking on that.
When Steve and I took down the nets for the tennis courts, we actually spent like an hour in talent, just kind of going through stuff, cleaning out the equipment area, which was just littered with stuff, and there was definitely in the bathrooms, we keep the heat on in the bathrooms at full blast so that the pipes don't freeze. Those weren't turned on yet, so I left the doors open, so hopefully the heat that is on will get into those rooms. Definitely a concern though. And there was hornets everywhere, all over dead all over the floor.
Yeah.
Like thousands of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There were like, when I went in there, I think I mentioned that there were probably like 20 or 30 of them. But
oh no, I swept the whole floor, and there was I had a pile that was like,
oh, great.
A lot of them.
Bats.
No, it wasn't bats. Yeah, you're right.
You'll find them next.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy, I'll drop in. I'll try to do it weekly. I'm semi-retired between positions. Reminder that on the 16th, right, Wednesday the 16th, is we're gonna have a Red Cross in there doing a blood drive.
Okay.
Now, is there something? Should we keep the heat cranked in the bathrooms and the door shut? What's the proper protocol to keep the pipes from freezing?
I mean, they're electric baseboard heating, so we can turn. I would say turn them on. I wouldn't crank them, but just keep them warm. We did put the heat tape, because there's a pipe that runs underneath the stage, and that's what used to freeze all the time. But there is that pipe tape, the heated tape that's on that now. That was put on there. Probably.
Where's that plug in?
It plugs in the kitchen, I believe, or in
Okay.
the closet behind the kitchen.
All right, I'll look around, make sure that's taken care of.
All right. Any other business? All right. Hearing none, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain. Yeah, you got it. All right. Carries 8-0-0. The only thing we all agreed on tonight. All right.